Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome back to Garden of Doom. This is episode 43. And we have a special guest who I'm going to introduce very shortly. But first, I want to remind everyone that if you are so kind to subscribe to Hammerlock Hangover on the Wrestling Soup Network, and that doesn't mean I want you to listen to Hammerlock Hangover, though I'd love you to, but you don't need to. Garden of Doom will drop down automatically. It's on the same feed. If you're not interested in wrestling, delete Hammerlock Hangover, and you will not get the other Wrestling Soup podcast unless you want to. It's just because we have a shared feed there, because they're both my shows. And the reason is quite capitalistic, or at least theoretically, and that is that the more downloads on that one feed, the better our chances for the advertising monetization. And as you all know who listen to the show, the ads come whether you want them or not. So that's all it is. But I'm going to keep the Jeff Lippman Garden of Doom Spreaker for a while, but maybe not forever. And so if you don't mind, Hammerlock Hangover, the Wrestling Soup Network. Fear not, you won't get 27 other podcasts you don't want. You'll just get one that you don't want, which is Hammerlock Hangover, which maybe you will want. But you'll get Garden of Doom as well. And about half of the backlog, the back catalog of Garden of Doom is on there as well. And I'm going to continue to upload a few other shows every now and then. If you want the full backlog, just go to the Jeff Lippman account and they're all there. Anyway, without further ado, today my guest is Reverend Maya Christine Nartimid. She is an Akashic translator, an author, and an artist. And I'm going to let her tell you more about herself and let you know what she does and what her expertises are. But she has a very interesting story. So thank you very much, Reverend Nartimid, for coming on the show today. You had to be coaxed a little bit, but we got here. So I thank you. And how are you today?
Oh, thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be on your show. And I'm doing fine. Finally, sunshine and warm weather has come to 8,000 feet in Colorado.
That's right. You have a really interesting life story, and I'm going to let you do most of the talking about it. But, you directed me to a couple of places, and I went to a couple of others. But you were born in Venezuela. It turns out that your dad, I think, worked for an oil company down there.
Yes, he was a troubleshooting head electrician.
Very nice. And then at a young age, your family relocated to the Ozarks in Arkansas, so two very different places.
Very different. That's where my father decided he'd had enough of one, and he wanted to have a little dairy farm in the country. And when I say dairy farm, I'm talking about, see, I was born in 49, so that would have been like 52, 53, and he had about 6 cows or 7, and he hugged them all every day and played games with them, and they just adored him. So that's the kind of dairy farm we had.
Well, very
he went out of business pretty quickly.
Yeah, it sounds that way. But who knows? I mean, it would have made a nice kids movie. At some point, you relocated to Hawaii, and now I know that you are in Colorado. Now, I am going through this really quickly because this is your story. But a couple things I took note of that you spoke words at 4 months, and you started seeing angels at age 2, and at a very young age, you saw a white-suited blonde man while in the Ozarks that certainly didn't fit in the area, and you later processed or realized that may have been out-of-body travel or was in fact, and that early on your mother realized something special was happening and she was chronicling you. You also started doing chronicles or journals at a very young age, and that you authored your first book at 18. So I've taken us from 0 to 18 and skipped over, and just hit some high points. But I want you to fill that in because, like I said, this is your story.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Well, let's see, where do we begin? Well, my mother did chronicle the unusual things that happened to me as a very young child. Nowadays there's so many souls being incarnated that are like this. I mean, they're coming with amazing gifts and extrasensory perceptions and all of this, just a natural knowing. But in those days, there weren't that many. I'm sure there were many more than me, but we didn't even have ability to find them. My mother didn't, there was no way to even know that. So she felt like, okay, well, this is how it is. I'm just going to write this down. So that's what she did. And I was 4 months old when I would make these funny little noises at night. It was always at night. And my mother knew that it wasn't a diaper pen or anything. She knew that I had to be taken outside. She just knew that. So she'd take me outside. This is the tropics, so you could go outside at night anytime you wanted. And she took me outside, and I pointed at the heavens and said, "Star." And, so she said, "Whoa, okay, I think I'll write that down." Then when I was 4, in the Ozarks, I had the experiences of the dreams, which I now know or a dream. There had been more than one, but I remember one where I was floating through the air. So we know this was an astral journey, okay? And I was taken into a desert mountain. Well, there are no desert mountains in Arkansas. And we didn't have a television. We went to movies an hour away once in a while. But, I mean, there was not any fodder for me to imagine any of this stuff. Anyway, floated inside a desert mountain, and there were these beautiful people, human-like people, and they wore these really skin-tight white, like jumpsuits, and they were showing me things in this cavern area, and they were very friendly, and they showed me these tall machines. Well, they looked exactly like what we call now computer towers. Of course, we don't even hardly have computer towers anymore. We passed that up, but that's what they sort of looked like. And they would tell me that they would tell me things about all this equipment. And I understood it perfectly. They were talking to me just as if I was an adult scientist, I guess. And I understood it all. So, but of course, when I came back, I didn't remember all of that. But I remembered a few things, and one of the things I remembered that I drew a very childish picture of, but it was an interesting picture, and my mother wrote down what I said it was, and I said, "This is a clock controlled by the mind." So, that's how things started out, Jeff, and they just kept going after that.
Okay, well, that is certainly something. A clock controlled by the mind, I'm trying to wrap my hands around that concept or my head around it, and maybe I will before the show ends. So we have your first book at 18. It's entitled Under the Gray Moon, and it was about post-Lemurian people in Canada, which is a really specific set of topics. I mean, first of all, Lemuria is something that was long forgotten and then has come up again recently because I guess because of all the finds sort of in the seas between northeastern Australia and southeastern and south central Asia, going into the islands. I guess it's east at that point, and then in Canada. So tell me about the inspiration for Under the Grey Moon, and for those listeners who don't know, what are Lemurian people and how did they get to Canada?
Well, first of all, I need to backtrack just a bit to say that when I always had difficulty going to school. By difficulty, I was a good little girl. I didn't, I wasn't a rebel or anything. But I was smart enough. It didn't bother me to learn stuff. But I felt that a lot of what I was learning was false information. It was mixed in with truth, but I just had a feeling. It was like, this isn't right. And then also I felt all these energies and vibrations around me of these people that were, to me, asleep. I didn't feel, now let me be clear, I didn't feel superior to them. That's not the feeling. If anything, I might have felt inferior. But I felt like, I don't belong here. And these people are all asleep. That's the only way I could put it. I could feel it. And again, this would have been, in high school, well, the time that I got to high school, that would have been 68, well, actually earlier than that, 65, 66 in there. But I always felt it, even in kindergarten. So it was difficult for me. One day, this was in junior high school, that's what they call it then, I don't know if they call it that now. I put my hand on the door to go into study hall to wait for the bell to ring. And when I put my hand on that door, words formed in my head. I can't say, I didn't hear it in my ears, but I heard it in my mind. And it was a voice that said to me very calmly, Christine, that was my major name then, Christine, if you go one more day, they meant to school, it will be dangerous. Christine, if you go one more day, it will be dangerous. And instead of being frightened by this, because it was so calming and so sure, and I felt so connected to whoever said that, I just turned around and I came back and got in the car, because my mother always waited to give me moral support to see me going. Not that she didn't think I would go in, but I mean, she was just waiting there giving me moral support because it was so hard for me. Anyway, I come back and I get in the car, and she said, what's the matter? And I told her. She looked at me really hard for about 3 seconds, and she said, let's go home. And I never went back. And I was close enough to the end of the school that I didn't, it was, they make me come back. So
how old were you then?
Well, I would have been 17. But actually 16, 17, on the cusp there, because I was 17 would have been my last year in high school, and I was in the last 2 months of my second to last year in high school.
So this was in the 60s, probably? What, 66?
Yeah, it would have been 67. It would have been 67 that this happened, I think.
Okay, so they were laxer then also about truancy and things like that.
I think so. So anyway, I didn't go back. And 6 months later, I was a little at odds with myself. I'm a teenager, right? And I was never involved in groups of kids or anything. I wasn't a loner. I wasn't shy. None of that. But I just wasn't interested in football games and how many boys I could date. And, I just wasn't interested in those things. And so when I tried to make friends with people, they were friendly. Everybody seemed to like me, but they looked at me sort of oddly. That's the only way I can put it. I don't know if that was good or bad. And they would kind of, like, oh, okay, well, bye. So I must have been exuding something that sort of they didn't understand, So anyway, I was 6 months out after dropping out. I was sort of despondent. I didn't want to go back, but I didn't know what to do, So my mother said, well, 17 magazine has this contest, for short story contest. You like to write poetry. I would write a little poetry now and then, not a lot. She said, why don't you write a little story for 17 magazine, And I said, oh, okay. And I sat down at the typewriter, and I started to write. Now, this was not automatic writing. This was me just simply knowing this, okay? And all of a sudden, I started writing about these ancient people in Canada and blah, blah, blah. And I said, this continent, I didn't know what to call it. This place sank in the Pacific, and this, blah, and all of this, and this happened, that. And I started writing, and I wrote like 2 chapters. And I said, here. And I gave it to my mother. And she read it, and she said, I don't think this is for 17 magazine. So it took off from there. And I kept writing. And so then she said, well, why don't you, this is pretty good. She said, why don't you enroll in this little, this university thing was having a writing course. And you could take it. You didn't have to be high school graduate to take it. So I enrolled for this little course. In those days, these things were free. You didn't have to pay for them. And I went in and enrolled in this course. And about, I presented my story to the teacher in a day or two after I'd been in, and he read it and said, oh, well, I think you ought to write about stuff you know about. And that was the end of that. So I dropped out of that thing. I said, no, I'm not going there. And so then finally, it was like I just had to keep writing this book. Okay, so I kept writing it. And then my mother was guided. She was walking in the mall one day, and they had these book stalls in the center of the mall in those days. So she was, all of a sudden, she was just guided to go over, just drawn to the book stall. She looked down, and there was this book by James Churchward called The Laws of Mu, or one of those books. He had several of Mu, and it turned out he was in the 20s and 30s. He was an anthropologist, an archaeologist, a bunch of things, but he was very, very interested in the idea that there had been a continent that sank in the Pacific called Mu, because Lemuria was a later name they called it, Mu, and it was, and he felt that he traced all these vocables of languages, that's partial parts of languages, from Tibet to South America to Egypt. I mean, he went all over the world, and he gathered all this, and he said, these are the vocables that conform the original language of Mu. Well, my mother opened the book, and she went, yikes, because many of the vocables that she was laying her eyes on composed the names of the people and the places in my book about these people that had come from the continent that sank in the Pacific.
Well, I need to ask you a question. What does the word vocables mean?
Well, vocables are partial words. In other words, like story, the parts of the words, library.
Oh, like phonetics or syllables.
Yeah, right, in a way. And you can put them together in other ways to form other words, but they have these specific meanings of their own. And so...
more like Asian characters.
Yeah, kind of. So, but when we put the vocables together, they fit the names of the people and the things, many of them, that were there. So we started thinking about it differently. And we thought, this must be coming to you somehow. We didn't know the word Akasha or any of that. And so we did know about Edgar Cayce. So we looked up a book or two of his. We didn't read voraciously. We just, there's this Akasha thing. Yeah, okay. And we just pieced things together as we went along. And so finally we came to the conclusion that I was receiving things from this Akashic record, which of course is an Eastern word that really just means, I forgot exactly what it means, but completeness, the whole picture, the place that you receive from. And so...
So Akasha is a place, not a it. It's a place, not a person.
It's a place of consciousness. It's actually an etheric energy that impresses, every thought you think is impressed in the Akasha. Now, according to Thoth, again, I have to go back. Thoth is my go-to guy. I'll get further in that story in a moment. The mentor that I have had consciously since 1977. But according to his Akasha, there are 3 levels of Akasha. One is the lower Akasha. That is based on memory. Where did I put my keys? Oh, I remember. I put them in the drawer over there. I have to pick up the kids at soccer practice. Oh, I remember. Yes, I have to do that, and it's at 4 o'clock. This is the lower Akasha. The higher Akasha does not rely on memory as we understand it. It does not rely on that. It relies on direct communication with the all-knowing. I know where the keys are because I just contacted it in the Akasha. I don't have to remember where they are. That's what that is. And then we have the supra Akasha. And that's really kind of beyond our reach right now, but it's on a very high universal level. If we were illumined beings, we would be able to interpret that. And I don't know a whole lot about that. So anyway, where was I? Oh, the Akashic. So we decided at the time, we didn't know all of that, but that, I was somehow bringing these things in from the Akasha. So I said to myself, being about all of 20, 21 years old, well, gee, if I can do that, I've always liked science. I'll just ask the Akasha the whole nature of the universe and how it works. And, so an ambitious moment. So, but I did ask, and I started getting sciences, high science. Now I know they were quantum sciences, but I didn't know that word then. And so I started receiving all this stuff, and I wrote it, and I wrote it, and I wrote it.
Well, this is what college kids do when you were college age, except college kids ask their friends in their room or in their fraternity or over a bong or whatever. You instead were doing it, yourself, or you with your mother and with I'll just call Toth your guide for now. I mean, you can expand upon that when you get to that part.
Right.
But these are perfectly normal big questions that people that age ask wherever they are.
Yeah, right. So I did start getting all this. Well, then my mother was always the one that found the place to go. And on the 3D that connected all this. So we're watching TV one night, and this is later years. This is about in the 71, 72, something like that. It might even been 73. And so we're watching television, and Edgar Mitchell comes on. Now, he was then an astronaut. He later became the founder of the Noetics Institute, for parapsychology. But he was an astronaut, and he was getting ready to go to the moon. And he said in the interview that when he got back, he was going to retire from NASA because he wanted to establish a research center for parapsychology. He didn't even have the name for it yet. And my mother said, whoa, somebody's saying parapsychology, that's sort of like mysticism, esoteric mode. They're studying things like you're doing. So why don't we write him a letter? And I said, okay. So we wrote him a letter, and we sent some of my science to him. Well, he went to the moon. He got back. He went into quarantine. And then when he got out of quarantine, he went into his office, and there were tons and tons and tons of mail for him, which he had no intention of looking at all that. His secretaries were going to, field it out for him. But there was this one package sitting there, all these packages, and he later told my mother that his hand just reached for it. He said, I had to open this package. And it was from me and my mother to him. And it had the science in it and everything, and he called us. He actually got my mother first, so he had a nice talk with her. And now we were living in San Antonio, Texas, which is not that far from Houston, Texas, where NASA is, and he was. So he paid for our way and room, hotel or whatever, to come to NASA, because he was still there, even though it was not a part of that. That's not what he was representing in this. And we actually came through the gates of NASA. We had a special pass, and we came into his big office place where he met with us, and just that once. And then after that, we met at his apartment or apartments of his colleagues. And he said that my science was valid, but it was far beyond anything that they were working with at the time. Now, he had the most, at the time, he had the most scientific credentials of any of the astronauts. Of course, now my science would be, oh yeah, because we have Nassim Haramein, we have all these other guys that are working with this quantum, amazing quantum logic, stuff. And but then that was not the case. Okay, so
can I break in and just tell the audience a little bit about Edgar Mitchell so that they are aware? I mean, they can Google it themselves, but he was in fact an astronaut. He died about 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, and he is noted as a UFOologist as well. But he was the pilot of Apollo 14. He did spend 9 hours working on the lunar surface in the Frau Maro Highlands, which, by the way, I love the name because the Maro map is a thing of amazement in and of itself. He was the 6th person to land on the moon, so this is a real person. Carnegie Institute of Technology, naval postgraduate, MIT, real deal in every way, shape, or form. So I just wanted the audience to know that, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, I'm glad you did. So he researched. My brother and I went back and forth just a few trips, and he researched me. His team talked to me. They were very young kids, basically, that he was gathering for his noetics thing, and he was just a really nice guy and obviously very open-minded. But he would ask me questions. Like, I remember one time he said, and I said something. He said, "But that's beyond the speed of light." And I said, "Yeah, it is." Well, nowadays, that wouldn't be shocking because of all that's come out now. But then it was like, what? Beyond the speed of light, And he said, I'll never forget. He had a little red goatee then. He had a little red beard, and he leaned over and kind of rubbed his beard a little bit and said to me, "Well, Christine, the speed of light is no small potatoes." And so, anyway, he kept going with me for a while, and then finally, one day, he came and knelt in front of me. I was sitting in one chair, my mother in the other, and he knelt in front of me, and he said, "Christine, you're the most exciting thing I've come across so far." He said, "But I've already made life plans to do this research and develop this institute. And I can see that if I stay on track with your work, that's a lifetime work right there." He said, I have to choose. And I've already started my noetics, and this is what I want to do with my life. And, so that led into that. But,
what are noetics? What are noetics?
I don't really know what noetics is. To tell you the truth, you might have to Google that. But that's just the name of his research. But what it did for me, Jeff, was it gave me...
Oh, I bet I know what it is. It's probably near object education.
It gave me a sense of purpose, that I wasn't making all this stuff up, and it really pointed me in the right direction, for my life's work. Otherwise, I don't think I could have not gone that direction. I was on fire with it. When you're born to do something, whatever it is, it just puts you on a fiery path. But it certainly gave me more purpose, more focus, and more incentive. So I'm very grateful to him for having done that for me.
What's interesting that he is not the only astronaut that came back from space and sort of went into an alternate science path. There's a lot of stories surrounding Neil Armstrong that when he came back, he volunteered to lead or be part of an expedition to South America that was mostly archaeological and geological, and those were not his fields. And he never talked about certain things that he saw on the moon, and he never talked about that expedition, but there's all sorts of rumors abound about that, but there's also lots of things connected to that part of South America with Lemuria and Lemurians, and also, as and also light-haired, tall, white people, or maybe not people, entities, beings. So I don't know if these things are related or not, but it just struck me as interesting. And obviously over the last year of doing this show, I've encountered a lot of people, a lot of stories, and sometimes I draw points that aren't connected at all. But that's sort of the one through line in the show, is to try and find pan-cultural, pan-planetary or transplanetary connections, and some are gonna be sticks, some are gonna be more interesting than others, and some are just me, firing. So so let's start with some of this simple stuff. First, so we did what Akashic is, which is not a simple concept, but I think you explained it about as well as can be explained. For those who don't know, what's Lemuria or Mu?
Well, there's a lot of takes on that. Mu is a continent that sank in the Pacific Ocean a zillion years ago, so to speak, and many people have channeled things about it. A lot of the things have agreed, some things have not. But from James Churchward, we've got to go back to that dude. He's the one, that my mother found his book, and it started us off on the more esoteric understanding of what I was writing. He said that it was the motherland of all mankind. Well, from my Akashic understanding, agrees with that. And there's a whole story around that I have uniquely, I think, at least I've not heard it told any other place. But it doesn't seem to contradict anything that I've heard either. It just kind of goes out there a little further. We won't get into that here. It's a long story. But
well, if you can find a way to make it, like 5 or 10 minutes, just the summary, the high points. Actually, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Well, basically, there's when these souls came from another realm, the Blue Star Rigel, to create a planetary field, and they used this rock that we call Earth, but it was just a rock then, basically, to connect to. They created what Thoth calls, sometimes he used to use the word light forest, but then he came to use the word lotus reality. And this lotus reality, he think of it as a lotus, and they're up there in the lotus, and there's this little stem, this little umbilical cord of the lotus that comes down and connects to the rock. And as it connects to the rock becomes enlivened, and the rock receives a soul, not as we have, but a planetary soul, and it becomes more of a cocooned, vibrant, essential being. So they're in the lotus reality, and they're planted to just hang out there, basically, and just feed from the, connect to the earth. There's a lot of reasons why all of that. And then, but some of the souls in the lotus say, hey, let's go down the beanstalk. Let's see what's down there. And so they go down there, and it's like they start changing things. And so then others have to come down to help them figure it out. And then one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden, they're propagating down there on the planet, and that's where everything takes off down there, and sort of goes down the rabbit hole after that.
So the energy from the Blue Star, Rigel, by the way, Rigel is a star. It's in Orion, and Orion has often been associated with gods and origins. Greek Osiris, I think, was Orion. The energy sounds a little bit like Vril, V-R-I-L, maybe exactly. I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert on these things, but an energy that sort of has a life force of its own. It also sounds a little bit like, a more spiritual version of panspermia, intelligent design, the architects, the watchers, if you will. But a lot of myths and legends and beliefs have similar types of origin stories. So, yeah. As unusual as this may sound to people, I hope it doesn't sound unusual to listeners of this show, because you've heard things that are close enough or in the same vein to know that there's a lot of cultures, folklore, legends, myths, religions, that it's not all that different. The specifics are different, but the generalities aren't necessary. So, all right, that's my interruption, and you can either expand upon that or continue with your story.
Well, one other thing I want to bring up in my story before we just sort of phase that out is there's actually two things. Is the entrance of the ultra-terrestrials in my life, who led me to my what they call benefactor, but I now use the term mentor, Thoth, whose soul was the Egyptian, but he really wasn't Egyptian actually, that brought the blueprints for the Great Pyramids and other things for the planet. So let's go back first to the advent of coming in with the ultra-terrestrials. So as not long after my writing began. In fact, during the time that I was communicating, going back and forth with Edgar Mitchell, this began to happen, as I recall, a long time ago. During that time, I started seeing persons in my room. Now, these were not little bug-eyed guys with, that kind of thing. These were like human beings, and these particular ones were male, and they were very tall, and they had those like skin-tight jumpsuits on, and they were not foreboding. They began to communicate with me telepathically, even when they weren't present in my room. and they told me that they were there to help me heal, to balance my system, and to expand my awareness. And I'm using my own terms here, but that was basically what they told me. So that was fine and dandy, but I would wake up in the middle of the night and see a 6'5" guy standing in my room, and I'd scream bloody murder. And they said, please try not to do that, because that hurts us. They said the way we're coming in energetically, when you scream like that, it's very painful. So I tried my best, okay? And one time I woke up and I saw these balloons floating in my bedroom, and they went right through the wall, and I said, what was that? The next day. And he said, well, we were trying to find something as harmless as we could possibly get that shouldn't be in your room, to sort of, introduce a feeling of, it's okay, Maya, or Christine at the time, see these pretty balloons, they're just floating through your room. So they were trying to get me used to all of this, Well, my mother, who was old enough to be my grandmother, I was her only child, she was born in 1904 when the Wright brothers flew Kitty Hawk, right?
Wow.
Well, she didn't have any trouble with this at all. They appeared to her, too. And she was like, oh, hi. She didn't have any problem with them. So one time my physician appeared to her and said, would you mind getting up and walking into Christine's room, and I'll follow you, and let's see if that works.
Did it?
Well, no, my eyes opened immediately because you could feel the energy of these beings. So immediately you're awake. And I saw my mother walking in the room, and behind him was this nice, tall, I recognized him as my physician. I went, ah! So they had a hard time with me. But they said this was a period. They weren't going to be appearing to me like this all the time. They were working with me, and it was necessary. There's some other funny stories around that, but I won't go into it. Anyway, so as that began to phase out, they were still there with me, but and communicating telepathically a lot. They said, well, we're here just to prepare you for your benefactor. And your benefactor is on a higher level. Later they called him a luminary, on a higher level. And so we're preparing you so that you can communicate directly with him. He's been with you all the time, but you just can't be aware of him or communicate with him yet. So it took 10 years, but in 1977, they told me who he was, and that was Thoth. I had to look him up, and they said that I would begin to communicate with him, which did happen. There were phases of that, and so Thoth and I became buddies. But he's never appeared in my room. I saw his hand one time with a beautiful ring on it. And it wasn't scary. It was just such a beautiful hand and all this light with this gorgeous ring. And then, not a gaudy ring. I just mean it was like a signet ring or something. And then I saw just a beautiful green light, an emerald light. And I knew that was him. Other than those two times, I've only seen him in my mind's eye.
Are you able to remember what the symbol on his signet ring was?
No, I wish I could. It was a gold ring, and it might have even had a few stones in it. I could not even see it that well because of the way the hand was turned. It wasn't face forward with me.
Now it's pronounced Thoth?
I pronounce it Thoth. There's Thoth, Thoth,
and Thoth, right?
Thoth, but I pronounce it Thoth, and that's the way I was guided.
And it's Thoth, at least in English.
Yes.
But people have said that Thoth was the advisor to, I hope I get this right, Anunnakin?
Yeah, that's not, according to my Thoth, that's not correct at all.
Okay, or it's a different Thoth. And then
the Enki, they say he's Enki. He has a lot of similar archetypal traits to Enki. And Enki actually was the one good guy out of the Anunnaki that, tried to help people. But he's still not the same soul.
Are you saying Enki like, I think the Sumerians of Babylon said Enki and E-N-K-I, is it the same or is it different?
Well, maybe it's Enki. Yeah, I'm not big on, I don't, study that because it's not my direction. But according to what Thoth told me, this Enki guy, I can't say his name quite right, he really tried to help people.
Well, names are also different depending on the culture and the story. So, that it could be synonymous. And if Thoth's, who you say Thoth is, I'm pretty sure that Thoth's pronunciation is correct.
Yeah, I'm just saying that that's what I received from him. So what he's saying is Nikki was not a bad guy. He may have started out a little not too sure about things, but he got it straight, and he tried to help a lot. He actually did. Well, but he's just not the same soul. However, in the mythical stories, they've mixed a lot of these things together. The whole thing with the Anunnaki, for instance. The Anunnaki were there. They did stuff. They messed with DNA. All of this. Yes. But according to Thoth, they are really not that big in the picture. They've been made into these rock stars somehow, because they're not. They came in, they messed around, and they left. There are other things that have come in and messed around and left, but they didn't leave such a big star trail as the Anunnaki did. But the true beings that govern, that work with this planet, that orchestrated the creation of the Lotus reality, all of this, they're luminary beings. They are our kindred with a capital K. They're benevolent, loving, and they're part of our genetic family. They don't come to mess us up. They come to sustain us. And one of the things that they speak about are the reparations. And the reparations are after the Anunnaki came and started messing with us. The vibration of the planet changed. So most of the Sun Lords, most of the Illuminaries that were on the planet helping us at the time had to leave. Well, they didn't exactly even leave. We left them, as Thoth puts it, vibrationally speaking. And so, but that caused them to have to leave too. And so then we were stuck with the Anunnaki for a while. But after a certain period of time, things developed where their vibration started lifting again, and the Sun Lords could come back. The Illuminary could come back, and they began the reparations. This was after the Anunnaki left, thanks to Enki. And the reparations were helping us to reconstruct our genetic field, our consciousness, our spiritual auras, to try to get us back on track. And the biggest reparation was the first, but they had at least two others. Yes. And he tells me now, in the 21st century, we are in the final reparation. It's a different kind. They are walking among us visually, but we are in another reparation. Now, I speak about all this on my videos, and we've done two shows on my and Michael Dunn's, we share a Blue Star Rising show. We'll have links to all of that below this this podcast, to my main website, and it will lead you to the videos and the Blue Star Rising show. Anyway, so the reparations came and went. Obviously, we still have a lot of things wrong with us here. But if they had not done what they did, and they're not still doing it, we would have totally self-destructed.
These are the luminaries the same? Is that synonymous with the Solarians?
Yes, the Solarian is a term for them as well. No, yes and no. The luminaries are the top of the heap of the Solarians. Many of us walking around today are Solarians, okay, because we come out of that energy stream, and it doesn't make us superior or anything. That's our genetics. That's who we are. And but the luminaries out of the Solarians are the highest, the capstone beings. You
had, or in my notes, you had pointed to a Hopi term called Kachina, K-A-C-H-I-N-A, if I pronounced it wrong, which is very similar, if not identical.
Well, yes, the Kachina. Now, I'm not versed entirely on Native American and Kachina literature, so I'm not going to profess to be an expert on that. But I do know that the Hopi talk about the star beings coming down, and Rigel figures the whole constellation of Orion, which is really, according to Thoth, that is the field from which the universe was born. Now that sounds really weird, but I'll get to that in a minute, how that matches up. Well, the Kachina, the Hopi seem to feel that too. And I didn't know this, of course, when I was receiving all this other stuff. But, so the Kachina represent these beings that came down to them. Now, from the Thoth Akasha, not from the Hopi people, but from the Thoth Akasha, he says that the Kachina actually were a combination of some of the star beings from Rigel and whatever, then their helpmates, and also from the what he calls the Elohim, the creational lords of the planet that manifested in sometimes in Kachina form. So that's, again, a whole nother story. Every time I mention something here to you, Jeff, it's got like history to it. I've got years of work behind it. So I can't just tell it all because it's
understood.
So
yeah, we're definitely going to have the links in the show notes. Yeah. I can't help but ignore that Elohim, though, sounds a lot like Elohim.
Oh, yeah, well, it is. Elohim. Yeah, Elohim. I could pronounce it either way. Yeah. That's what it is. And there's Elohim in the vastness of the universe. There's various levels of it. But each planet has its own register of Elohim for the planetary sphere. And those are the ones I'm speaking about that made a presentation among what they call Kachinas, as well as the star beings that were there. Because there's a whole other topic we haven't entered into here that's very near and dear to me, and that is the inner earth, the hollow earth, not all the cavern, but
that
the
is
hollow.
Great, because that's almost next on my list. But yeah, I was going to ask you if the Solarians and the Luminaries are the Ultras, and I know that the Ultras and the Interiors. But before we jump into that, because I definitely want to talk about the Interiors and the Inner Earth and the Hollow Earth, and we've had some guests on that talked about the Hollow Earth before, but there were a couple things that I think were tied more to the Luminaries. I could be wrong, but I had them chronologically here in my notes as the Aloi, A-L-O-I-I, being the first language.
Yes.
Okay, and can you expand on that at all, or yeah?
Yeah, well, I don't know a whole lot about it, but Thoth refers to that as the first language of mankind, coming, of course, out of Mu, and it came out of telepathy, because at first there was only telepathy, and as people needed to talk more because they were losing some of their telepathic skills, they developed a language that was based on the neural synapses in the brain. So that would be the Aloi language, and it wouldn't be an ABCD kind of thing. It was very, very quantum, let's put it that way. But out of that Aloi language developed the actual languages, and the ones that the Sanskrit and the Hebrew languages, some of these others, early ones, Mesopotamian, whatever, these directly came out of the original Aloi language, and they were more 3D languages, but still, that's where they came. So even the language we're speaking right now, English or German or French or Dutch or whatever, it has a root. It all has a root in the very first language, which was the language that came out of the neural synapses of the brain from the telepathy field.
If we were to conflate stories and belief systems, would Aloi be the language that was lost in the Tower of Babel situation, or does it predate that, or does it come afterwards? Is it pre-flood or Babel, or either?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It hasn't been asked me before, so I'm going to pause for a moment.
That's okay.
I feel that the Aloi language was already, beginning to be diluted before the whole Tower of Babel thing. That seems to be more something that has to do with how the Anunnaki decided to separate the children of the sun, the Solarians, from their kindred, so that they could work their wiles on them. And I haven't gone into that a lot, but it's kind of a dark picture there. So I'm going to say that didn't help it any, but it started really before then.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that black and white lined. It's probably somewhere in the middle.
Right.
I also had next, and again, forgive me if I'm going out of order here. Again, I told you earlier, I take all my notes on one page, and there's arrows here and there and everywhere. I had Ancients of Mu, or Mu, written down, which I guess goes back to our the Lemurian peoples. Are the Ancients of Mu, are they Solarian? Are they luminaries? Are they humans that intermixed? Is it sort of like South Pacific Atlantis? I know I'm simplifying things. I know.
I'm not sure where you got the Ancients of Mu. What what context you took that from? I can only say that the Mu lasted a very, very, very long time before it finally sank, and so you're talking about, well, in time as we know it now, probably millions of years, because time has shifted and it's different now. So anyway, if you start out with the first Moruvians, as folks like to call them, these were the ones that just came in on the beanstalk. So there's a whole story about them and what happened there, and then they go on, different phases and whatever, and then they become more like real people, and they're, they have little problems and whatever, but still nothing like we have today. And so there's such a large period of time to look at. So when you say ancients of Mu, there's all these different ancients of Mu, different periods of time, different stages of dissolution, because we have to face the fact that we began when Thoth says we disconnected from our signature of light, and we didn't leave it. Actually, it's always with us, but we disconnected in the sense that we are not aware of it. We are not channeling it. We are not connected to it. It's there, but it's just sort of sitting there because we have not, we've separated ourselves from that knowing. And when we did that, things started to de-evolve. They just started to de-evolve because the signature of light in its fullest expression in the universe keeps things copacetic. It keeps them involved in what Thoth calls the full light spectrum, which he refers to as the metatronic spectrum. The half-light that we're living in now is the orotronic spectrum. And there's nothing evil about half-light, but if it's not complete, bad things can happen. So anyway, where was I? I just went down my own rabbit hole here.
Oh, I know where you were, but I have one other. Maybe this helps with Ancients of Mu. I'm not sure. I had written down the word or name Abbagidos, Abbigidos.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. It's out of my work, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
Okay. Because I sort of had that indented under Ancients of Mu, so maybe that was someone from there. Okay, I think that we already covered your extra-dimensional friends. I think that's how you interpret them as a child, and then realized that these were the people who eventually they were the Solarians who eventually got you to the Luminaries, who got you to the initiated, the spiritual benefactor Thoth, which you also refer to as Thoth Hermes. I'm assuming it's pronounced Hermes as opposed to Hermes. Which, ironically, Hermes is the name of a Greek god as well, and the Greek panoply is very similar to the Egyptian panoply, if not just stealing names.
It evolved and perhaps de-evolved from that, yes. And we have to look at Thoth also as an archetype. So the being Thoth, like you have a famous person, and they're real, they exist. But then after they die or whatever, they become an archetype. Right. And the archetype lives on, and it can be developed or changed. The magic and the mystery of it. People can interject their own stories, and here you go, and you have a whole other thing happening.
Right. Every great basketball player gets compared to Michael Jordan, and maybe in 50 years there'll be, well, that's probably a way oversimplification, but I hope people get the analogy. You had also noted something about magnetic encodings of thought impressed within the etheric grid of the planet. So, first, what's an etheric grid?
Well, it's kind of a nebulous term because some of these things you really can't find human understanding words for because it's outside of the dimension that we can cognate that well. But what you're referring to there is actually the Akasha. You must have taken that as something that's explaining what the Akasha is, because that it's an etheric band. Etheric is like, okay, let me put it this way. Thoth will refer to spirit and matter, but he qualifies it to me repeatedly. He said, I'm using these terms so people won't get confused, but actually there's no such thing as spirit and matter. There's just various levels of densification of spirit. And what we call matter is a particular level of densification of spirit. So if you could think of the etheric is the level above the densification. There's a particular band, you might say, that's ether, a ether formed of a particular non-physical, if we're going to use the word physical, property that is less dense than the physical and yet very responsive to it, extremely responsive to the physical. So if you put something in the etheric, the physical is going to be able to access it on some level, even if it's unconscious.
You're correct. I did get it from the Akashic record. I actually got it from where you were describing that your story that you wrote, your book that you wrote, actually turned out to match with that gentleman's book about the post-Lemurian people in Canada, and I guess that's where Thoth explained where you got it from. You deciphered it from encodings that you were able to, I guess, access in the etheric grid of the planet.
Right.
Before we leave this, how did the post-Lemurian people get to Canada, and why did they go to Canada?
Well, they went there because there started to be some real problems, and there was cataclysmic experiences on the planet, a lot of them. And then this eventually developed so much that Lemuria, first we had Mu. Mu sank. It didn't just sink like Atlantis. Neither of these continents went boom, they're gone. That's not how it happened. It broke up. This cataclysm broke this and changed this, and then there were some islands left, and then boom, this happened. We still have islands left. There's Hawaii, there's Easter Island, there's Polynesian Islands. We have islands left of Lemuria, or Mu. And so that's what happened to Atlantis as well. So in the breaking up of Mu, at some point, and it was never given which point, it was a pretty bad cataclysm, and the ash, covered the sky a lot. So that was a gray moon. So they called themselves the people of the gray moon because the moon was cast, with a grayness above it. So I don't know exactly what period that was. Again, I was writing this many years ago, whole other mindset, a little Christine than the Maya of today. But that is what that was about.
Do you think there's any relationship between the expression the gray moon that they used and the term the grays that's sort of all over UFOlogy and or is that just a coincidence?
No. I would nix that one.
Okay, that's fine.
Not a connection to that.
Fair
as far
enough.
as what I received, yeah.
Okay, so where you left off when I started going through my little note was you were about to go into the interiors.
Oh yeah, Inner Earth, my favorite topic. Yes, well, Thoth says to me, now first of all, I began to be aware of the Inner Earth and Thoth's take on that and everything. This was already after he had come into my experience consciously. He came into my experience consciously in 1977, and by 1980, he was beginning to give me, it was a little bit before 80, probably 78, 80, he was beginning to give me information on the Inner Earth. And I called it Inner Earth. I'm kind of wish I had used the word all along, Hollow Earth, because we're not talking about all the cavern areas, although he mentions those. But really, we're talking about the sacred hollow of the planet. And what he gave me was a lot of science. It doesn't just like, oh, these people live in there and they have this idyllic life and blah, blah. No. He gave me the science. Why does this exist? How can this physically exist? How does it exist in other spherical planets? How is it created? All of this stuff, a lot of it. And he gave me all of this information along with understanding that they were people of the interior and all of this. Now, the skivvy on it, just the basic bones about the people. The ultra beings, when things were going sideways for the first Mu, as it was breaking up, and there's another story behind that about the negative forces of the overcoming the temples and all, that kind of thing was going on at the same time. The ultra beings, the kindred, the kindred of the planet, brought certain people from Mu who were selected from because of their awareness, their spirituality, their talents, whatever, and they didn't drag them in, they didn't kidnap them, they asked them if they'd like to do this. They brought them into the hollow of the earth and established them and helped them develop a place in there. They did that with Atlanteans, they did that with Egyptians, they've done that with some Celts, they've done that with some Europeans. I don't know exactly how they go through this process, especially the more recent ones, but nobody's kidnapped, nobody's taken against their will. This is all a consensual experience, and when they bring them into the inner earth, they're developing an ark, a living ark, like Noah's Ark, ark inside the earth, where the genetics, the spiritual awareness, the culture that is the pure culture that connects to the Metatronic, the full light spectrum, can all be nested, developed, and be synchronous, so that at the right appropriate time, these elements can be brought back to the surface of the earth in one way, form, or another. So we're not talking about some kind of beings that just spontaneously grew up in the inner earth. They've all been transported in there. What was the hollow like before then? Well, there were a few indigenous animals running around, and at that point, and there were some indigenous plants and whatever. It was pretty primitive, and there were even still some volcanic eruptions going on in there. There aren't any more. But when they brought the cultures in and they helped them develop, and they're still there helping them develop, it also helped to evolve the inner cavity in regard to the ecosystem. And that's a whole other subject. Oh my gosh, we could talk 6 hours on that. And the central sunatoma, as he calls it, the atoma of the central sun, and how it operates and how it's created and the whole thing. So all of this is going on, and I wrote a lot about it in my first years in the 1980s in my source publication, hard copy publication that I put out then, that later became Temple Doors. It was published in one form or another from 1980 through 1999, and I still draw from these publications in my writings and my work, integrated with what I know now. But I kind of, moved away from the inner earth. I did not disillusionment, but there's a lot else coming through, So I would refer to it now and then, or both would, and time marched on and marched on and marched on. I've been doing this consciously for over 55 years. And so more recently, about, let's see when it was. It would have been about a year and a half now ago. It was introduced back to me in a very profound way. I won't get into all of that here, but my attention was brought back to the inner earth. And it was in preparation for a project that I was given that I feel is more than anything I've ever been given in this lifetime to do. And I'm just on fire with it. And it's called the Quantum Logica. He changed the name on me, now I can't say it.
I have it written down.
Interactive. Quantum Logica Interactive.
Oh, because I had written down Quantum Logica Gateway and then the Quantum Cube. So all right, so I'm outdated as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, it says underneath it says we've changed the name. So anyway, I have dyslexia, and it's kind of ironic because he gives me all these names and terms and things, and I keep trying to spell them right. It's terrible. Anyway, so Quantum Logic Interactive, and this is an incredible program, and the reason I was bringing the Hollow Earth back to my attention was because of this program and how it relates and how we're working with the technology of the inner earth, bringing it to the surface through this 9010 technology brought from Germany, from an amazing guy named Oliver, and we're using that technology, integrating it into the program that Thoth is overlighting, called the Quantum Logica Interactive. So we use the actual physical technology to be able to create quantum fields. We have a quantum network now of 15 terminals, I believe, all over the world. Well, mostly in the U.S., but some overseas. And we hope to grow it further. And it is for helping the planet, very simply. There's obviously more to it than that. So that's why this was brought back to me. And now I'm very, very connected to the inner earth again because of this. And one side note is that I believe, well, all of us on the planet, most of us anyway, I think, that have any kind of spiritual connections at all, our souls are in other places, other dimensions and whatever, besides just right here where we are in our physical bodies. But it's all related. It's not scattered. It's all related. And sometimes we have concurrent lives, usually in a slightly removed dimension, but it's very closely connected. And that's what the hollow earth is, in a slightly removed dimension. And he explains the physics about that, the quantum physics. It's not airy-fairy stuff, how that is created naturally when a planet forms. So anyway, I feel that I have a concurrent life in the inner earth, and that I'm working with these things there. And in fact, I didn't realize it till Thoth brought it to my attention more recently, that the name that I have, that I've in the inner earth, Mikala, a female, I named my doll that when I was 4 years old, and I'd forgotten about that. I called it Mikala because I was 4 years old, but same name. So, and this is not rare. I mean, all souls have various experiences, so it's not like I'm special because I have some life in the inner earth. It's nothing like that. We're all multidimensional beings, but I happen to have a purpose to know this connection, because this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm here on the surface and I'm there in the inner, because it's a working system that my soul volunteered for, whatever, to do. And it's been going on a long time, far longer than my current life, or even hers.
Let me ask you a question. So if I understand your recitation correctly, I think I do, there's nothing to be feared from the interiors. They're not antagonistic or nefarious force.
Now, okay, let me make this clear. The central hollow is sacred. It's beautifully aligned to full light spectrum. They aren't angels, they're human beings like you and I in a way, but they have such an incredible environment to live in. They are able to live their best, the best of themselves. So, they're very enlightened beings, okay? They're spiritual, they're beautiful. However, you have the rest of the planet. You have all the chambers and the tunnels and their inner cities. Before you ever get to the inner earth in that slightly removed dimension, in those areas you have the good guys, the in-between guys, and the bad guys. So there's a lot of snarly things going on in these cavern areas, not all of them, but some of them. And then there's some beautiful beings also living in the cavern areas. So it's a mixed bag. But when you get to Central Hollow, the actual Central Hollow, which is inside this magnetic field, sort of a ring past knot, you don't get in there. You don't just wander in to make mischief. In the original days, some people were able to get in, but no longer. It's fixed so that magnetically, if you don't align to that spiritual energy, the frequency in there, you cannot get in. So it is sacred and sacrosanct. But everything else is up for grabs.
Well, you're giving us a lot of garden today, which is great, and I wanted you on for the garden, but of course we can't have garden without a little bit of doom. So,
I'm talking about a little doom.
We're going to let you get there naturally, but I can't just let you gloss over the good guys, the in the middle guys, and the bad guys. So the doom is. Let's talk about the bad guys first. Who are the bad guys?
I don't focus a lot on them, but they are there, and we have some of them are. Some of them are nature elements that have become corrupted. So they're like, think of them as, I don't know, gnomes or something. I'm just pulling a name.
That's fine. It gives us words that we can all interpret what that means.
And they're ones that have kind of been corrupted and that kind of thing. And there's part human and they're part nature being. There's a whole reason for that. And so, they have their own agenda. Oh. Then there are negative, I'm going to call it negative ETs, extraterrestrials, that have made little beddings in there for their own purposes, and they have undersea places as well. The kinds that grab you in the middle of the night and poke things up your rear end and stuff. These guys, they have their little bases in there and whatever goes on in there. And then there's some Anunnaki hybrids. The Anunnaki, for all intents and purposes, left. They've got a few hybrid beings in there, trying to figure out where they belong. I don't know. There's just when you get into that picture, the negative energies, we assume, some of the stories that are told are like these negative beings have it all together, man. They know how to control us, and they are like on top of the heap, and we are their minions. And this is just not the Thothic story, okay? It's not at all. If you have that kind of energy, it is chaotic, it is misinformed, it is not aligned to spiritual principle, therefore it is a lost element. So it's struggling to find its place. It's just science. It's struggling to find its place. And in doing so, there's something that Thoth now calls the archonic cloud. And the archonic cloud is like a virus. And he used this word before, what's happening now. It's like a virus that infiltrates the magnetic fields of planets where souls draw it. Oh, I'm sorry, that should not be going on.
That's okay. We all have our electronic devices that are doing stuff.
So it's the archonic cloud is a magnetic. It attracts itself to magnetic fields that are not aligned to spirit. Okay, and we all have that in our own lives. When we have a bad day and we go off the rails a little bit, for this whatever, that's that archonic energy saying, "Ooh, I can feed off of that," and it makes it more prominent. But the archonic energy can feed big time in certain souls, energies on the planet that are just letting them in, opening the door wide. So we have certain beings in these little cavern areas and whatever, where they can feel safer to gobble up the archonic energy because it's food for them.
Can I ask you an almost silly question? And maybe it's not silly. Are any of the bad guys in the Hollow Earth on any level? Are they very large? Are they giants?
There's no bad guys in the Hollow Earth. In the interior caverns there are.
Gotcha.
Not in the Hollow Earth, okay? And there's giants all over the place. There's bad guy giants, there's good guy giants, because it's a genetic trait. And just because you're of a genetic family doesn't mean you're one thing. I mean, here we are in this racial thing. It's not just because you're an Asian or an African or an Anglo doesn't mean, that stereotypes you. That's who you are. You're a person. You've got a soul, and you create your own reality in that expression. So that's the same thing with the larger species. So you have them in various categories. That's a whole other history trail to go down that we could bunny hop sometime, but not right now. But there's another picture here, and that is that. There it goes again.
That's okay.
It's a new phone, and I don't even know how to turn it off. And that is that Thoth speaks to me about. Now, here's if you want to understand some of the darker stuff. Here's the thing that we need to understand now, because now we're living an interesting experience on the planet that seems very dark, and yet there's a lot of light too. So Thoth speaks about, and he talked to me this way and talked about the basics of this back in the 1994-95 is when he first started talking to me about this. He said that there's the old guard and the developing new guard of the OWL, the One World Legion. Some people nowadays call it the One World Order of the Elite, whatever you want to call it. But he called it the OWL, One World Legion. And the old guard at the time in the 90s was the prevailing thing. Okay, they were the guys. But he said there's this new order forming out of them. And he says, I'm going to call them the Rainbows. And the reason he called them the Rainbows was because they were not, first of all, they were not as hardcore, evil, nasty at the time. But also because they still had an agenda. The agenda was still to control the world. But they were thinking, well, you know what? This isn't the way to do it. These old fogies are doing it. No, we need to do it a different way. We need to shine a lot of rainbows in that space. We need to puff up the glitter, give them what they want, lead them into the happy land. And it turns to be out to be down the Emerald Road to the Wizard of Oz, who's manipulating everything behind the curtain. So he told me that way back then. Okay, so now, and he began to get back on the subject in 2017, he said now the Rainbows, the new guard, is beginning to truly take over. They've infiltrated enough. They're the main squeeze here, not the old guys. They're still trying to make their things go, but it's not really working. The new ones. What's the difference between the old and the new, other than the new has a flashy presence. The new's going to say to us, you don't like GMOs? Oh, we'll get rid of those. We'll give you money. You can just have money. You don't have to worry about anything. There's all of this stuff going on. And then the old guard, doesn't have that hand to play. But the real difference between the old and the new is that the old guard is working with off-planet ETs that do not have the human beings' best interests at heart, okay? And they are also doing some, black magic and stuff that they've been doing a long time. Not everybody that's out there, just the hardcore old guard. These other people don't know anything. They're so confused, they don't even know they're being led around, but the regular ones. So that's their story, and it's been their story for a long, long time. But the new guard, the rainbows, is saying, wait a minute, that's not working anymore. It's not that we object to pedophilia and blood sacrifice and working with negative ETs. We don't care. But it's not working. It's going down the drain. We need a new picture. And the new picture is totally AI and hybrid stuff. And they developed their own kind of, I really sort of am not at liberty to talk about this too much on the air, but they've developed their own kind of hybrid people, so they don't need any of these off-planet guys anymore. They've got their own, they grew their own. And they're beginning that. That's a new project. But it's all about incorporating humanity with AI so that the AI controls the scene, clean, beautiful cities, and people that think they're happy, unless they go behind the curtain and find out the horror of it all. And that's where they're headed. And if you want to see the development of the first city of the rainbows, the first Emerald City, you're going to look at NEOM, N-E-O-M. You can Google it. And this is in the Middle East. And who is the supposed head of this old project? It's that guy that cut up poor Shikogi in a million pieces, that fellow. And so, but he's really not. He's just...
Mohammed bin Salman?
Yeah, right, that fellow. But he's
the
just
Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, but he's just a showcase piece. He's not the real, person.
So he's building NOEM? N-O-E-M?
N-E-O-M. And it's this beautiful city that they're planning and everything. Sure, you have to be chipped. Everybody has to be chipped so we can keep everything, clean and decent. And so, you'll become part of the system. But you're going to get so much good stuff. So anyway, that is the kind of plan that it moves in that direction. But, I put this out because Thoth said, okay, it's time to put this out. So I have an article on it, the owl and the rainbow pussycat. But I don't like to focus on this a lot because I believe in not closing your eyes to these things, but not putting a lot of weight into it. Let's focus on what we can do about this. And that is that we can do things about this, and we are doing things about this on a higher level. And one of the things, what I'm doing, what I've been assigned with, is the Quantum Logica Interactive Program, because it relates to the bigger picture. A small cog in the wheel, but this cog is a necessary cog among many other cogs to make this inner light network, the true inner light network of humanity, blossom and grow and take back their spiritual beingness and secure a place for them, anchoring it to the signature of light of all humanity, and of all humanity, not leaving anybody out. Even the so-called bad guys, if they have a change of heart, they're in, because it's a thing about vibration and frequency. It's not a belief system. It's not aligning yourself to some pact you have to sign in and do. It's vibration. It's frequency. Where is your frequency? Where is your heart-centered consciousness? And that determines where you are in this picture that is being created, developed naturally, but being aided by the ultras, the inners, and the people on the surface of the earth full of light. All of this, which Thoth calls the whole gizmatch, the inner light network.
Do you have any belief or confirmation that the sound and the vibration energy is tied into why there's pyramids all over the world and
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I have a knowledge of it from Thoth. He calls it the plan of that is called the Pyramus Radius Matrix, And this is the matrix that's forming on the planet. It's not a place, it's not a thing, it's a vibration, a frequency again, but it's a matrix that's forming to bring in the souls who are developing themselves, preparing themselves for what Thoth calls light principle 40, which is the moment of human and planetary ascension. That doesn't mean we rise up in the air. It means a giant shift in frequency that takes us from a world system 1 to a world system 2. World system 1 is entropic, world system 2 is syntropic. And that system will take us physically back into the blue star Rigel. There are other planets and systems and stars. They're all very important in all of this. But according to Thoth, and this is his, what I go by, this world was created specifically through this Rigel energy field. Now, there are those that say that Thoth is evil, that Rigel is evil, that Orion is evil, that Osiris is evil. What can I say? I can only tell you that all of this has been going on with me since I was a baby. And I don't consider myself an evil person.
No, you seem very nice.
I've been brought up, I've been raised by these beings. My mother certainly was involved tremendously. My father, bless his soul, beautiful human being, but he died when I was 10. So I've been raised by these beings. So I'm not a perfect person, but I think I'm a good person. And if I was messing around with all that evil stuff, I don't think I'd be the person I am today. So that's all I can tell you.
Okay. I have I want to ask about the in-between folks, but I think I have a more important question. What should a person like myself or a listener, what signs should they be looking for? What vibrations should they be paying attention to? What feelings or dreams should they be paying attention to let them know that they've gotten I'll just use the word invitation for lack of a better term, to expand? I understand that your program is all about letting anyone know the path, but if someone had a calling like yours and maybe didn't have as welcoming a mother, and the same life experiences, what should they look for in their selves and their own experiences to tell them, hey, maybe I should explore this further, with the caveat that everyone should explore this further, period, but that some have a special calling or connection.
Yeah. Connection. Yes. Well, it's so simple, really. It's just you've got to follow your heart. You've got to believe in your heart, first of all, before you can follow it. In other words, your deepest, what really makes you feel that you're, what Thoth calls tuning in to the homeward light. That's what he calls it. What makes you feel like you're going home? Like it feels good. It feels like this is a path somehow. Maybe it's not the end of the path. It's not the big fireworks and everything, but it's leading me down that path to my homeward light. And when you get that warm feeling, and it's not even fuzzy. I don't even want to call it fuzzy. It's warm, but it's strong. It's pure. And you get that feeling, even though you have mixed understanding. I don't really understand what she's saying here. But if you have this feeling and you pursue it, it opens up. So it doesn't have to be what I'm presenting. Whatever you come across in life that gives you that feeling. But you do so as an authentic human being with your own sovereignty. You're not giving your power away to any belief or principle or even, just path of any kind. You're your own sovereign human being. But you can approach that path or belief or system with a recognition of its vibrancy in your field. And you say, okay, it gives me a vibrancy in my field. What does this really mean? Let me explore this. And you do so, but you do so from an objective position, but not sterilized objective position. You want to have some subjectivity because you want to be able to feel where your subject is. Is this your subject? But at the same time, you want to be able to be looking at it from a higher perspective. Does that make any sense?
Of course. Okay, and earlier you mentioned there were 4 reparations, and I know you said the 4th one is coming, but if you could do a chapter heading or 3 sentences on what 1 through 3 are, and then I know that we have to conclude with the 4th. Well, we don't have to conclude our talk, but we have to conclude the coverage of the reparations with the 4th, which I assume that's where you're going to bring in a little bit more doom, or maybe a lot. But yeah, if you could just go through what the first 3 reparations are, and then I think that will take you to where you were going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, okay, the first reparation was the biggie. I mean, they came in, they established temples, and I have these videos that I'm referring to are like no longer than 20, the longest are 30 minutes long, some are just 15 minutes long. So they're quick listens, reads, look-ats, But I've covered this in this video, but it's called the first reparation or the reparations or something. Anyway, so in that one, they literally physically came back and they reestablished some of their ancient temples, and they brought people in voluntarily, of course, to help them with health, with emotional stabilities, just like you'd have a wonderful beneficial clinic that came to the people in the tribes of Africa or something, and they came there with good hearts, and they helped them, and they also helped to evolve their genetic situation. And they were not manipulating genetics for agendas. They were helping humanity get back to what they had before, which was natural. So they were just helping them get their natural mojo back, genetically speaking. So they went through some things with that, and part of it was some immaculate births that took place, and all of this kind of stuff. So that happened. Now these 2 other lesser ones were kind of like the first, but they were just lesser. They weren't as all spread all over the planet. That's all I can say about them, because he's not brought any more extra information. They weren't dramatically different. They were just smaller groups.
They were fine-tuning writ large, or with certain...
Right.
Okay.
Fine-tuning. That's a good word for it. Now, the one that we're in now is very different, because they know that humanity is not prepared for them to just step off the boat and say, "Hi, we're here to help." I don't think that would work very well. So they're working on their own platforms through the Pyramus Radius matrix, which is developing, because that's an intersyncing platform, integrative platform between humanity that is open to receive and us now. So they're working through that. I have a whole video on that too, of course. A short video. But what they're developing in us now is bringing us gently as possible, in the urgency of the time, back to a point where we can recognize that we are the people we've been waiting for. Of course, I didn't invent that term. That's something many people have been saying, that we really are who we've been waiting for, and how to open up that lotus flower and receive that consciousness. And they'll be there with open arms to help us. But they're not, "Oh, well, we're going to tell you how it is here." They're not like that. They're helping us to understand our own potential, our own selves, and to find it within ourselves. To recreate, in the deepest manner, heart-centered consciousness, which is proven by heart math technology. You can Google that, heart math technology, to exist. And Thoth speaks about it as well, this heart-centered consciousness. He said nobody's going anywhere. We're not ascending with the planet, with the planetary genius, that's a whole other topic, to a world system too, unless we individually have a heart ascension. And the heart ascension just means being there with yourself and with your heart and with your center of being. And
that doesn't sound very doom-like.
Huh?
That doesn't sound very doom-like. That doesn't sound scary at all.
No, it isn't. It's challenging, though. There's a lot of challenges ahead of us, but we have to, as long as we realize that we're not alone, we're being helped, and that this help is coming from persons who really understand us, really, really, really understand us, because they're part of our genetic family, and they've been with us a long time. They helped us develop here. They're loving, and they're the ones that we can turn to. They're not some kind of alien race that says, "Okay, we'll give a helping hand. Look at these poor suckers down here. Let's see what we can do for them." It's not like that. They're helping us from a standpoint of knowing that we are their kindred and are way equal to them. Not equal in all this other, highfalutin stuff, but equal in spiritual beingness. And that's the way they approach us.
So they'll help, but it's up to us.
Yes, but they're going to give us the kind of help we need if we're willing, and if we're willing, we will be able.
All right.
If we're
And so that, I think, brings us to what services do you offer? And I'm sure that this ties into how to help oneself get to that point. So what exactly are Reverend Maya's services, and where can they find you? And I know that there was something else about crystals that probably flows into here, and we can talk about that a little bit. And then I have one last word that I have asterisk, which hopefully is useful. But let's talk about your services, or you talk about your services.
Okay. Well, primarily my services are mostly free. In other words, well, for one thing, you might realize, since I've been around a while, although not really so much out in the open, but on the web for a long time. So I have a lot of information out there, and it's all free. But it's all spread all over the place, like little baby rabbits. It's on all kinds of little free WordPress sites, and it's a mess. It's part of my dyslexic problem. So I have a friend now who I am planning to pin angel wings on, her name is Jody Joy, and she is creating for me a master website that will bring it all into one website, and she's putting it on her server. It's a project. It's not going to happen completely overnight, but we do have the rudiments of it, with the basics of it up there. YourStar.org will now take you to this new site. There's not much there yet, but
wait. So repeat that more slowly, please.
NewEarthStar.org.
Perfect. Thank you.
Brand new. Earth is in planet and star is in twinkle twinkle.org. And right now we just have a little, but we're going to get more and more and more. However, I still have all that stuff on my WordPress site. So if you on that site, if you sign on to my MailChimp newsletter, which is free also, you will get information. So you're getting updated, and keep checking back on that website for more, because I have all these videos. And
oop, I think we lost Maya, so I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so we got Maya back. There was nothing nefarious there. It's just her battery died. That was all. It wasn't like she was being interrupted by those bad guys down under or anything like that. So
I was talking too fast anyway, so it needed to slow me down, I guess. I tend to do that. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, about my new website. Yes. So you can find what you really need on there, which is links to some of my videos, many more coming, that will be transferred over. You will find my sessions, how you can schedule a session with me, an Akashic session, and what that's about. And I have an automatic scheduling program thing. You can just schedule that if you want to. And I do them on Zoom, so they're live with you on Zoom. And it's an hour session. You can schedule for longer if you wish. So, but then there's my Quantum Logica Interactive program, and that one is free too. Although, if you really want to become super involved in it, you don't have to. You might want to get some of the technology, to be more closely connected. But again, you don't have to. You can become a part of it anyway, and it's helping the planet, but it's also helping you. So, because you're part of the planet. Now that, I will also put a link in there that is not on that new website, but it takes you to this gateway page. Gives you a little more information about it. There's a short video to watch that's kind of old, but it does the job. And if you feel like, hey, I think I'd like to become part of this, really what we're doing is on Facebook. You need to be on Facebook. We have a chat, and we have the group page where I give what we're going to be doing each night. It's a streaming that we stream each night for the planet while you sleep. But there's certain short videos to watch or short information to read, because it's part of a teaching. You're receiving and integrating the information so that you can become the quantum field that is eliciting these evolutionary steps for the planet, or helping to do so.
And this is mostly or all free? Oh yeah,
it's free. As I said, you can buy some of the technology, the capsules or the cube, which is more expensive than terminals, but you don't have to do that to become a part of it. It's just some people are doing that. If we didn't have people that had these cubes, we wouldn't have the project, because they're the ones that are in the core, that are fueling it up. They're creating the quantum field that others can participate in without having to have those things.
So I note that it was .org, which means that you're tax exempt.
Yes.
Is it?
It's a 501c3.
Okay, so it's a U.S. tax exempt. I know that you were in Hawaii and you relocated to Colorado. I believe that was at. Didn't you tell me that Toth told you to move?
Well, I lived here before in Crestone. This is a very unique place, Crestone, Colorado, in the San Luis Valley. It's the highest alpine valley in the continental U.S., or maybe all of it, and it is 72 miles across. It is, if you Google San Luis Valley or mysteries of San Luis Valley, you'll come up with a lot of interesting things. There's all kinds of portals here. Spaceships appear back and forth, and there's where the cattle mutilations are. You've got both sides of playing this game here, but mostly the light. And so I lived here. I was sent here. I don't like to say sent. Requested to come here in the 1990s by my sources, and I stayed here for 7 years. Then I left for other things to do, and I returned in 2017, again guided by my sources.
Okay. Well, actually, I probably will Google the mysteries of Santa Luisa Valley, and if you're kind enough, if you could guide me to someone who can talk about that sounds like a future show as well.
Yes, I will, but you know what? I have a short video series of 3 videos, each one of them are like 15-20 minutes long, and I will put a link to that as well that I created on what Thoth tells me about this sacred valley and why I'm here. So I'll add that in the links. So the links will be my main website, the gateway page for Quantum Logica, and the video series on the sacred valley.
Okay, very cool. Thank you. And then if you can find me a speaker on that'd be great, and I'll run that. I'm already booked through July, so there won't be any competition there. Also, there was a word I asterisked twice. Higher. I'm just going to spell it. Hieraphi. Hieraphi.
Hieraphi. Yeah, that is the cube in the inner earth, in the sacred hollow in the city of Seraphim, where my other self is, and these other souls that are working with this project, the Quantum Logica project. It's the cube that is kind of like Station Central. It is a switchboard that allows the programs that they want to feed through our cubes on the surface, our terminals, to be able to broadcast to the planet. That's the terminal that they have in the inner earth, and it's created through what Thoth calls intuitive circuitry. Most of their technology is created through intuitive circuitry, and he told me at the time that Tesla had actually developed it, but it was not well known. Well, just a few days after that, I accidentally, which I don't think was an accident, came across Teslaphoresis. And Teslaphoresis has recently been discovered as part of Tesla's work through the Tesla coil, and it is exactly what Thoth told me about being intuitive circuitry. So if you want to look up Teslaphoresis, but their intuitive circuitry is far more advanced than the Teslaphoresis of the surface.
That's amazing.
So that is.
Now you said the city was Seraphi?
Seraphi.
Seraphi?
Like the angel, Seraphi.
Okay,
it's
so
a very special city. It's an area. It's a very special area within the inner earth because it connects directly to the new earth state of consciousness. There's a communication between the two realms. It's kind of like the capstone of all the cities in the inner earth.
Well, you just glossed over like the angel. Is there a direct connection to the seraphim?
There is, because the seraphimic energies were strong in developing the higher frequencies of this planet through the universal healing.
So are the seraphim possibly luminaries that were misinterpreted or translated into being angels, or am I reaching again?
They have their, according to Thoth, what we call angels are their own kind of being, but they are related to human beings in the sense that there is a relationship between them, but they're beyond the luminary. They're in their own state, and they dwell in a non-physical, what we would call non-physical state within the stars. In other words, Thoth speaks of the stars as being the living lights, because that is where they dwell as the dwelling places of the living lights. We call them angels. and they don't have wings and everything. But when they appear to humanity, sometimes they have a quantum field, a torus field around them, and that flickers like a wings. You know, if you just see part of it, it looks like wings. So that's where that came from.
Does Agartha fit into this at all, or is Agartha not part of it?
Oh yeah, Agartha. Well, yeah, you know, that's a city in the cavern areas, and yes, you know, there's some sacred cities. There's the Shambhala, Agartha. There are places in the inner cavities, the caverns. I'm getting my languages mixed up here. The caverns of the earth that are very sacred. It's not just for the gnomes hang out. You know, it's a big place. Okay, so there's a lot of different things going on in there. And Agartha is a genuine city of light within the cavern areas of the inner earth.
Understood. And the last thing I had was 9010 technology, which maybe you've already sort of covered with the Hierophant and the cubes. So
right. You'll find more about that when you go to my Quantum Logic and Gateway page. It talks about the technology as well.
So where did I find you? I found you. Was it on the Earth Ancients Facebook group, or was it somewhere else?
I don't know. Oh, I think it was. Yeah, it might have been. I did think I put a post up there, one or two, and I think that's where you found me.
I did, and you didn't want to come on this show. I sort of dragged you on, but this was great. You were great. This is not scary. I hope this was a pleasant enough experience for you.
No, it wasn't that I didn't want to come. I was just trying to figure out what the Temple of Doom was.
Garden of Doom.
Garden of Doom. Okay, Garden of Doom. Yes.
The story of it is that at the time, my then host, who we talked about a little bit, how I got into podcasting through somebody else. He was going through a gardening phase. He was doing gardening. He was sort of obsessed with it. And so we were looking for a name. And, I'm like Droopy Dog. I'm always like, oh, this is negative. And he was doing all the gardening. So it just came out, Garden of Doom. And everyone's like, it's an acronym for God. I'm like, it's a total coincidence. And I've realized as time gone on, we love the name, or at least I loved it. I think we both did. And I realize as time has gone on, it sort of gives the wrong signal. But hey, it is what it is. But it really.
I think it was great because I'm on it, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was completely organic. God was an accident. It just he was gardening at the time, and I was the Doom. So he was the garden, I was the Doom. It's really a rather simple story.
Right.
But I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. You brought a line. By the way, Cliff Dunning, the host of Earth Ancients, he's coming on also. And maybe it was some of your positive energy that made that happen, because I never thought that, that he'd come on my little show, because his show is gigantic. So who knows? So maybe I'll be gigantic one day as well. Thank you again. Is there anything that we forgot? Anything that you need to plug that you haven't, or promote?
Well, I do have also a very interesting book. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it right now, because that would go into another thing. But I will send that link as well. How about that? Link to my book as well. So that's 4 different links.
Sounds perfect. I thank you again. Good luck with everything. And thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience, your story, and all of this great information with the audience. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, take care now.
Over yonder, what do you see? The sun is rising, most definitely. A new day's coming. Ooh, people are changing. Ain't it beautiful? Ooh, crystal blue persuasion. Better get ready. Gonna see the light. Love is the answer. And that's alright. So don't you give to find. Just look to your soul. Look to your soul. And open your mind. Crystal blue persuasion. It's a new vibration. Crystal blue persuasion. Crystal blue persuasion. Maybe tomorrow, when he looks down green field, in every town, all of his children, every nation, there'll be peace and good brotherhood. Crystal blue persuasion. Yeah. Crystal blue persuasion. Crystal blue persuasion.